Hey, welcome back to... I don't know what I'm doing here. Hey, welcome back to Rust Order Garage. And today is day 10 of the 51 Hudson build. Next on the agenda is to get rid of this rear axle. Alright, so... another day in the garage, and I am starting way late. I slept late today, like an idiot on a day off. I don't know why I slept late. Must have been tired. I don't know. Getting old. Anyway... the original Hudson rear has to go. Doesn't have to go, but I'm going to get rid of it. Nothing wrong with it. But, yeah. So, the original rear is a 410, from what I figure. And this is where I went down a rabbit hole. Unfortunately, I do this all the time. Basically, just doing a zillion calculations on driveline axle, RPMs at highway, critical speed of the drive shaft, and so on. So they all come together. So, and what I was going to do originally was I was going to make a one-piece drive shaft, obviously to replace the two-piece. And then I was going to run into tunnel height issues, possibly clearance issues, have to cut that cross member, and then also critical speed issues. I'll get into all that when I do the drive shaft, but just say right now, I am going to keep the two-piece drive shaft for the moment and run with that. So as far as rear gear, I was going to put in originally a 308 rear. Now I'm going to put in a 373 rear. Went down the rabbit hole. And of course, because that's just how I work. So I have... multiple rears here. Here's three of them right there. Those are S10 rears out of the pickup trucks. They're the narrowest. They're about 54.5 wheel mounting to wheel mounting, which is the closest I could get, call it off-the-shelf rear for this. This is 56, which if you take an Explorer 8.8 and narrow one side, that's perfect. That's 56. I don't have time for that right now, and I don't necessarily think this car needs an 8.8. The S10 rears are only the 7.5 or 7.65, not the strongest, but we're not looking to, shatter the world records with this car. We just need to drive it, and because it's a leaf spring setup right now, to swap it out in the future is pretty easy if I wanted to do that. So this is what I'm working with here. This is the original rear. Leaf springs, obviously. I don't know how much of this I'm going to be able to save. This is an early car, obviously, so the leaf spring is only 2 inches wide versus most of the more modern stuff you're going to find is 2.5. So if I can reuse these lower spring pads, I'll use those. I don't know if I can take off these saddles or not. If not, I have new ones floating around somewhere. This car was on the road, so the rear shocks should be reusable. The rear brake hose even looks brand new, so I see no reason why I can't reuse that. Normally I never do, but I mean this thing looks new. It's still not even dirty on the connections, and I did drive this car. It had brakes. It worked. So the other big thing here is this has a panhard bar. Now I've had a few. Mostly my older Cadillacs, leaf spring cars with a panhard. It's kind of not normally seen, but best I can figure, it's usually on my cars that have fender skirts, and it's just another locator for the axle to make sure it can't move side to side and maybe rub the skirts. I'm not sure, but it isn't needed, at least in my opinion. The leaf springs are not, straight front to back. They are angled. So they work like a triangle, and they should keep the rear axle in place side to side, and that's how it worked on my Cadillacs. I took the panhard bars off, and they worked out fine. They ran great, no issues driving. So I am going to lose the panhard bar. I'm going to leave the mount welded to the frame, but it's not going back on. So it's basically just an unbolt and removal and go back together. I'm going to keep the original leaf springs right now because, like I said, we need to get this car out. And even though it's day 10, I'm probably a month into starting this build. So I got to keep it moving. All right, so let's get this axle out of here. And I got my favorite junk shirt on today. Still trying to trash it. Let's see what happens. Alright, when I loosened up the U-bolts, the rear actually started moving down a little bit, so I'm going to take the shocks off. They may be holding the rear up in the air a little bit. If I put the socket on right, I will. Yeah, there's some tension on the shocks. Good. All right, so the spring mounting plates are off. U-bolts are out. Unbolted the brake hose and the brake lines because they're all new. Shocks are off. Last thing to do is panhard bar. And bushings are pretty shot on that anyway. Who knows how much it was really doing, but that's just a 15/16 nut there. And looks like the same up there. Blow those out, and this thing's ready to remove. Maybe not without heat. All right. Time for torch. She's off. This stuff, I can tell, has not been apart since 1951. Ha! It's a nut and a bolt, you idiot. Better. All right, panhard bar is off. I just unbolted the e-brake cables that actually went through the cross member there. And one last thing I just wanted to check with the axle sitting on the springs is pinion angle. And it is 3 degrees up. That's the standard deal. I found out that with a 2-piece drive shaft, the angles still come into play. So drive shaft is drive shaft with the pinion angle up 3 there. The transmission should be 3 down there, which is again standard. I'm at about 4 right now, but what I'm going to do is see when I bolt in the the drive shaft, when I bolt that carrier bearing up there, I want to see what the angle is from that front half of the drive shaft. I don't remember if it was straight or angled on the original because I didn't plan on using any of it, so I really didn't look at it. I'll have to look at my videos and see if I have any pictures or anything. But so the transmission angle may be in flux. So I'm gonna bolt the rear axle in, but I'm not gonna weld anything. I'll just put it on the pads, set it to 3, and then once things start coming together, I can make adjustments before final welding. There's the Hudson rear out and the S10 rear behind it. Very close, just a little narrower on each side. The leaf spring mounts are within a 1/2 inch, which would be a 1/4 inch each side. I'm going to see if this thing will just sit on those springs as is. That would be cool. The e-brake cables are cut on the S10 rear, unfortunately, so I'll hack those off. Those will have to be placed. Actually, I could, I'm not going to cut those. I can make those work. Yeah, didn't think of that. All right, I'm going to stick this up in the car and see what it looks like. And the S10 rear is sitting in there. Amazing. I was able to make it fit on the factory S10 pads. Now, the Hudson had these rubber pieces that were on top of the leaf spring, kind of like that piece that's on the bottom. But what that did was it reduced the height of the alignment pin to not much, you know. So I didn't really like that too much. So I took that off. And that gives me more of an engagement of the pin into the saddles on the rear. Now, the only deal with this is the pinion is angled way up. I mean, it's like 7 degrees up. And the original was at about 3. Now, I'm not going to make any change to that yet because I don't know where my ride height is. So if I have to make lowering blocks, I'll just make them angled and get the pinion angle down. If the ride height looks good where it is now, I'll just make some angled shims to put in there rather than cut the saddles off and redo all that. I'll just use shims and I'll get it correct and that'll work. But that's pretty cool that it was close enough that the factory S10 saddles even worked. That's amazing. So next steps are check out the U-bolts and the lower spring plates from the Hudson and see if I can make those work with the S10 rear. All right, let's see how this works. My old 80Cs. Oh. My old AnySeas jug that is getting hard as a rock. I got to figure out how to soften this stuff up again. Let's see. Got the old S10 brake lines here in the way. Those are going to go away. Is this actually going to work? That'd be pretty cool if it does. Wow, look at that. That might actually work. If this works, this is practically a bolt-in upgrade for people who have Hudsons to get rid of the old style rear and maybe get to more of a highway gear. I mean, this is 410s. It was. Which I guess is okay if you're not going very much on the highway. All right, the only issue is if it's an issue, The S10 pads are 2.5 inches wide versus the 2-inch spring, so they stick out about 1/4 inch. So the U-bolts are at an angle. It's not much. Not enough to make a difference here. I don't think. Man, that's pretty good. I don't see a problem with that. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could cut the spring pads down. But that looks good to me. I'm going to put the other side on. All right, there we go. Bolted in. And yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty amazing, I have to say. So it's all bolted in. The Hudson brake line is actually connected to the axle. Okay, no problem. Vent is attached on the top. I left room on the passenger side for a tailpipe, like factory. If I run that, not sure if I'm going to run into a single exhaust, or I'm actually thinking of running duals out the sides like NASCAR. Not 2 on 1, but, you know, out each side with like slash cuts or something, if it's not too ridiculously loud. I think I'm going to try cherry bombs on it just to see, so I can get some, it's got to have some rumble on it. We'll see how it goes. But that is really, really good. So the only issue left to deal with on this will be pinion angle, and I'll deal with that once we're doing the dry shaft, which I think is going to be the next thing we'll do.